What had been clear blue skies was now a grey, dripping shroud of fog. What had been calm, still waters was now towering swell. The little boat rocked far from the shore, and the thunder roared, and Ashley was pushed down into the bottom of the boat, where she could hear her father shouting instructions and her mother crying. Then there was a huge crack, and the world went dark. Her mother had emerald green eyes, and they shone, especially when she looked at Ashley. Her father's eyes were dark brown, and when she looked into his eyes, she knew nothing bad could ever happen. That was before the accident. After the accident, there were no more emerald green eyes, and when she looked into her father's eyes, they were cloudy, unseeing. In time, her father took a new wife. Stepmother's eyes were small, black and beady. Stepmother had a daughter. Stepsister's eyes looked at Ashley sideways. In the beginning, stepmother and stepsister smiled at Ashley, but their smiles never met their eyes. Her father worked long hours and was often away from home. "Be good," he said to Ashley, and she tried. Ashley longed to reclaim that first experience of radiant love. She watched it as children ran out of school into the arms of their parents. She saw the beams of love being exchanged between them. She saw the beam of love from stepmother to stepsister and thought if she could just get close to stepsister, then stepmother's gaze would land on her, but it went around her, over her, never landing on her. And when it did land on her, it narrowed to a point, and her mouth opened like a clapper, emitting a volley of instructions. Wash the dishes, clean the floors, make the beds. Ashley, in her attempt to be good, tried to achieve her task, but no matter what she did, even when she anticipated them, it was never enough. The dishes had smears, the floor wasn't clean, the beds not straight. Failing in her chores had consequences, painful ones. While Ashley had tasks to do, stepsister lay on the sofa and watched TV. Where stepsister had designer trainers and cool clothes, Ashley had charity shop ones. At first, Ashley and stepsister shared a bedroom, and then stepsister decided that Ashley was too untidy, too smelly, too Ashley. So Ashley slept on a mattress in the corridor. Ashley hated school. She was picked on for not having the right clothes, for not having the right shoes. She became very good at becoming invisible. She was often tired and struggled with her homework. Occasionally, a kind teacher would notice the circles under Ashley's eyes and ask her if everything was okay at home. And Ashley, thinking of stepmother's rages and what she might do with the Hoover flex, said, "Everything's just fine." The years passed. Stepmother had a friend. He came more and more often to the flat. He drank cans. Glug, glug, glug. Glug, glug, glug. And when he had finished, with large fists. His fingers were stained permanent yellow from the roll-ups that dangled from the corner of his mouth, stuck to his lower lip. One night, when Ashley was asleep, she was woken by large hands on her. She could smell stale beer and overflowing ashtrays. The same thing happened the next night, and the next. On the third night, when all Ashley could hear was the nighttime noises of the flat, she picked up her single bag of possessions and slipped quietly out of the flat. As the rosy dawn pushed back the night sky, she hid by the railway station. When the station became busy, she attached herself to a large family and slipped unnoticed through the barriers and onto a train heading south to the sea. She followed the crowds to the sparkling water. And when a group of men with big hands approached her, she ran along the beach to where the walkway ran out and her feet sank into warm pebbles. Far, far at the end of the beach was a row of upturned boats, and as the sun dropped below the horizon, Ashley slipped under one of those boats and slept. When she woke the next morning and emerged from the boat, a black and white dog was waiting for her. He appeared ownerless. Dog followed Ashley all that day and the next. They shared cold cartons of chips and discarded donuts. Ashley and Dog became inseparable. They spent all summer on the beach. Ashley would splash water on herself every morning, but even so never really felt clean. They became known, some people kind. One man who owned a chip shop and ice cream parlour often gave them a carton of chips and occasionally an ice cream. Others were not so kind. When the group of men with big hands approached, Dog growled low. Then the weather changed. Biting winds and stinging rain blew in from the sea. The crowds disappeared, the bins emptied, and Ashley and Dog's empty bellies forced them into town. They went from place to place, each time being moved on by people with sad eyes and broken dreams. Ashley and Dog trudged the streets, Ashley stopping often to press her nose against the steam and glass of a cafe, longing to be inside, longing to feel the silky smooth of hot chocolate dripping down her dry throat and into her empty belly. When she held out a filthy hand with broken, black encrusted nails, passers-by would avert their eyes, wrinkle their noses, gather their children and hurry past. The weather worsened. The cold seeped into her every pore and right into her core, and she was ravenously hungry, as if a beast lived inside her stomach that could never be satiated. Ashley dreamt not only of food, but of a place high up with a great door that no one could get through, with sheets that were sparkling crisp and white, of a hot shower she could stand under for hours, and of a fridge that was bursting with food. One night, one of the men with the big hand approached her and thrust a can and a smoke at her. She shook her head, but he insisted. Briefly, the haze from the can and the smoke made her forget the fear and the loneliness. When she woke the next morning with a pounding headache, the man was back, demanding she steal for him. She shook her head, but he curled his lip and showed her his fist. Large hands with taut, tattooed skin. Ashley slept in the day when the streets were busy, and at night she rode the buses around the town and up and down the coast. She had to keep moving. She knew if she was still, they would find her, surround her, they would harm her. One woman had had her sleeping bag set alight. Christmas was coming. The town was strewn with lights, and shoppers were too encumbered by bags to search for a wallet to find a coin for a hungry young woman. On Christmas Day, the streets which the day before had been teeming with people were quiet, empty, deserted. The shops, dark and shuttered. Out of the town centre, the streets blazed with light and laughter. Even Dog was subdued. On Christmas night, Ashley and Dog returned to the beach. The moon hung in a huge, luminous ball, casting a ripple of liquid silver serpent across the water. Ashley had a can, glug, 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 and a smoke. Dog was running in frantic circles, round and round and round, and suddenly, without any warning, Dog plunged into the sea. Ashley shouted, screamed, bellowed, but Dog, who always came when she called, ignored her. Ashley paused at the water's edge. Then, ripping off her shoes and her jacket, she took a step into the sea. The cold bit into her like shards of ice. She took another step and another. Water was up to her knees, and with the next step, the beach shelved and Ashley was plunged out of her depth, unable to swim, limbs flailing. Invisible arms reached up, curled around her, and pulled her down into the icy darkness. Far ahead was a green light. Ashley was pulled by the tides through the water towards the light, where they unfurled and tumbled her into a cave. There in the cave was an old, old woman. Her hair completely surrounded her and was full of chip cartons, chocolate wrappers, plastic rope and fishing hooks. Long curled nails scraped at the gravel and drifts of sand rose around her. Ashley could just make out a single cloudy red-rimmed eye and a mouth of broken teeth. "Comb my hair, child." Ashley spied a rake in the corner of the cave, and taking the rake, she gently teased it through the woman's hair, removing the chip cartons, the chocolate wrappers, the plastic rope, the fishing hooks, and in amongst the debris of the ocean, she found a bone. And another. And another. When she had finished combing the woman's hair and it flowed freely around her, she presented the woman with the pile of bones. The woman gave such a cry of anguish, it went straight to Ashley's heart. The old woman laid the bones out on the floor of the cave, bone to bone to bone to bone, until at last there lay the skeleton of a young woman. The old woman turned to Ashley with eyes of emerald green. "It is not your turn, child." And Ashley was pulled out of the cave, propelled through the water and flung onto the beach. She dragged herself up the beach and slipped under the boat, where she slept fitfully. She was woken the next morning by a knocking. She froze. Without dog to warn her, she had not heard footsteps approaching. "Hi, is anyone there?" Ashley waited. Footsteps crunched away from the boat. When she emerged, a young woman, not much older than herself, was leaning against another boat. She smiled at Ashley, and her smile reached her grey eyes. "Hot tea?" Ashley approached her and took the steaming cup of warmth. The young woman told Ashley of a place on the edge of town, a place where she could have a hot shower and a cooked breakfast. Ashley knew of this place. She knew the men with the big hands went there. On this day, the woman said, they won't be there. Later, Ashley, head down, made her way to the small, square, shabby building on the edge of town. The door was opened by the woman with the grey eyes. Yellow light spilled across the walls, and they were decorated with driftwood and shells and seaweed. In the centre of the room sat a group of women, some speaking, some quiet. They looked up as Ashley came in. "This is Ashley," said the woman. They smiled. "Nice to meet you," and they moved up to make room for her.